Life. Whoa, where's this going? That's an interesting topic, isn't it? Life. Where do we begin? Where do we end? We could talk about it all day long. And you all have plenty of experience. To not just sit there, listen to me talk about life, but rather to switch places and talk about life. You sat here. Life. See, the more you cultivate your mind, the more you develop your mind, the more you follow this path and practice the Buddha's teaching, the more you begin to realize that the problem has always been with yourself. It was never out there. Not one tiny bit. You begin to understand that the world that's out there was never constructed to actually bring you suffering. The external world has not been constructed to bring you suffering. Because if that were the case, then there wouldn't be any deliverance for any of us. If the outside world, if the external world was constructed, was formulated to bring us suffering, then there'd not be any recluse for any of us. The world out there is very innocent. It is not the reason that we suffer. We and we alone are the cause of our suffering. That's how life works. Life was not designed to cause us suffering. Life was designed to teach us about suffering, but not to bring us suffering. We bring suffering upon ourselves. And I want you all to have that realization. The more you realize this, the more free and the more happy you can be. Having understood and fully comprehended that you are your own savior, the salvation lay within yourselves. You are free to free yourselves. No one's holding you back. No one causes you suffering. No one brings suffering to you. We do it to ourselves. This is self-torture. These flowers. There's nothing about these flowers that compels us to attach ourselves to it. Don't worry, I'll explain. There's nothing inherently about these flowers that compels us to attach ourselves to it. Yes, we do attach ourselves to the flowers, but the flowers aren't responsible for that. I never got an invitation card from a bunch of flowers saying, "Hey, I'm here, please attach yourself to me." Did any of you get an invitation card? No. These flowers are innocent. They're not here to cause us suffering. In fact, they're all here to make our lives easy to live. They're all here to help us. The sun is here to help us. It serves its purpose, makes life easier for us. Would you want a world with no sun? Would you? No. The sun is not the reason you're here. Now that you are here, the sun is here to help you. The sun is not the reason you're here. The moon and the stars and the great oceans and the birds and the bees, these flowers, none of these things invited you to come here. You came here out of your own will. It was simply your choice, 100% it was your choice, out of your own free will, that you chose to come into being, into existence, into samsara. None of these things are responsible for that. See, the more you understand this, the more you can learn to be at peace with the world. What I'm trying to explain can be a little bit subtle, but bear with me. And try and contemplate on what it is I'm trying to explain to you. Focus and reflect on what it is I'm saying. You will understand, if you haven't already. None of these things are the cause of our suffering. People have a wrong view that the external world brings us suffering. That's all it is. It's a wrong view. That suffering is not real. Except for, of course, physical suffering. But even that you can tie back to the suffering that we inflict on ourselves. So one could say, well, it's raining, Swaminatha, so then I get wet. Surely, it's the rain that's responsible for making me wet. Okay, I understand. But weren't you there in the first place to get wet? If you weren't there in the first place, now it doesn't matter how much it rains. You're not going to get wet. Someone steps on your toe. Someone tramples over you, right? You say, well, it's their fault. Why did they trample on my feet? Aha, hang on. Why was your foot there in the first place? If your foot wasn't there in the first place, now they would not have been able to walk over you. So why was your foot there in the first place? Because you needed a foot. Why did you need a foot? Because you needed a body, right? Why did you need a body? Because you need this physical body to maintain and sustain your eyes, ears, nose, tongue. And why do you need them? Because you like your sights and sounds and smells and taste and touch. And that's why you came into this world. So that is why you have a foot. That is why your foot was there in the first place, which someone else walked over. So you see, again, if you think it through, it's not their fault that your foot got trampled over. Why was your foot there in the first place? So it's not your fault that you get wet when you go outside in the rain, is it? Is it? Is it the rain's fault that you get wet when you go out when it's raining? No. Why were you there? Why did you go out? If you didn't expose yourself to the rain, you wouldn't have gotten wet. If you didn't have a body, then you wouldn't have gotten wet. Why did you have a body? It goes back. Like the matta on the balla. Like the flea on the dog, right? You know the story? Everyone knows the story. Yeah. So we need to be able to link it back, folks. Back to us. We need to bring it back home. To put it really simply, bring it back home. That's your karma stand for today. Bring it back home. Whenever there's a problem, bring it back home. Because the way the world is, it's perfect the way it is. You'll have heard in Guru Swaminatha's sermons, Tiyana Vidiha, Anama Vidiha. The way it is, it's perfect the way it is. It's perfect. If it's raining out there right now, it's perfect the way it is. The rain is here to help us. It's not here to bring us suffering. The reason you're suffering is because you're getting wet. But the reason you're getting wet is not because it's raining. It's because you're out there when it's raining. That's why you're suffering. People talk about climate change. Right, so they have symposiums, right? Conferences annually, globally. They have conferences for all sorts of things. The top thinkers of the world, they get together, all the world's great leaders and the United Nations and all these fantastic organizations, they get together and they talk about global problems, climate change. So let's find out. We're here to address climate change. How about that? For a change. We're here to talk about climate change today. That's the agenda. So climate change is a problem, isn't it? Climate change is not a problem? Of course, it's a problem. Yes. Well, otherwise you'd be suggesting that people are wasting their time in these conference halls, getting together, spending a lot of money, flying people from all over the world, and don't talk about all the carbon emissions when they fly people from all over the world to come to one place. The irony of it. Well, let's not talk about that. It's a sensitive topic. But let's talk about climate change though. So climate change is a problem. Yeah, you get that. So if climate change is a problem, how do we deal with this problem? How do conventional men and women deal with this problem? Conventional people, how do they deal with this problem? They look outside. You can look out the window. It's getting very foggy. There's a lot of pollutants in the air. Let's try and fix this problem. So they start to deal with climate change. But I'm saying, bring it home. Bring the problem of climate change home. Climate change is affecting you because you're here to be affected by it. Your grandfather passed away 5 years ago. Does climate change affect him? No, because he ain't here. Your great-grandfather passed away 20 years ago. Doesn't bother him one bit. When was the last time you got a postcard from your great-grandfather saying, oh, climate change is affecting us here as well? I'm not talking about he passed away, then he's born again as a human being, so he's somewhere right now and he's also being affected by climate change. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about if you don't need to take it that far. Now just imagine that life ends after death. Okay? Just make that assumption. There's no rebirth. So life ends after death. No, climate change doesn't affect anyone who died. Anyone who's dead, climate change does not impact. There's a food shortage. There's a food shortage, isn't there? People are talking about that. There's not enough food for everyone, apparently. Child abuse is a problem. Violence is a problem. Drugs is a problem. These are global problems. Poverty is a problem. Problems. People have problems. But there's something very common between all of these problems. And what's common is these problems affect people who are here. It doesn't affect people who are not here. These problems only affect people who are in this world, who live, who exist. So food shortage is not going to be a problem for someone who's not here. If you didn't have a stomach, you wouldn't be hungry. Therefore, if you didn't have a stomach, food shortage isn't going to be a problem for you. But, of course, you have a stomach because you have a body that needs to be fed. You have a body that needs to be fed because your body is your housing for your eyes and ears and your nose and your tongue. Again, we are going back to the Mecca. Why? This is how we bring it home. We need to learn to bring problems home. Bring it back home. All problems, bring them back home. You see, when you learn to do this, it becomes so easy to deal with problems. I can only assume that there'll be people among you, probably most of us. I can't imagine someone except an arahant. People have problems. And there'll be times in your life when you get stressed out, when you become anxious, when you start to worry, when fear creeps into your mind, right? I want you all to be able to bring the problem back home. Bring it back home. Because when you learn to bring it back home, you feel empowered, not helpless. Why do people go picketing? Why do people go on strike? They pick up placards and then they walk all over town, round Lipton Hall, protesting. We want our rights. We want higher pay. We want a better pension. No? Want. They're clever. You've got to give them that, because they've got the problem written all over the board. Haven't they? We want higher pay. This is my problem. So they go out on the streets yelling at the top of their voices about their problem. We want equal rights. Good. Excellent. You've identified the problem. Fantastic. They don't expect us to do anything. All we need to do is just sympathize. Because what they're doing is they're walking around town with these placards saying, we have identified the problem. This is my problem. I want equal rights. That is my problem. So don't feel that they're asking of you to do anything. These are not demands. It would be wrong of us to think that they're demands. They're just saying, I have a problem. I know it. I just want to share my problem with you. If only, eh? If only. If only they realize that the problem is exactly what it is on the board. See, once someone realizes that the problem is with wanting, why would they go and protest? Why would they go to, lawsuits? Why would they go and take on legal battles? Why do we have a court system in the first place? This is how society has, come up with ways to help people get along with each other. What is getting along with each other after all? I want something from you. You give it to me. You need something from me, and I'll give it to you. This is what getting along with each other means. For as long as you want something, you will need the help of others. Therefore, you will always be dependent. Only someone who has given up all wanting, who has relinquished all desires, all wanting, is someone who is truly independent. I have made it the purpose of my life to become independent. I don't think I got anything on the 4th of February, 1948. I was the same man. Day before and day after, the 3rd of February 1948, I was the same man. The 4th, I was the same man on the 5th. Mind you, I wasn't on this planet. I was probably somewhere else, but I was the same person. I wasn't any different. Sri Lanka got independence, but didn't make any difference to me. I still wanted independence, even after I had gotten it. This is why, if there's something that happens out there that threatens the independence of this country, now that starts to trouble me, starts to worry me. If you get to hear any news briefings or any newspaper sightings of the LTTE resurfacing, does that not bring at least a tiny bit of fear back into your hearts? into your minds and worry because you feel your independence being threatened. But the truth of the matter is, the LTTE never took away your independence. They did nothing because they can do nothing to take away your independence. As a matter of fact, they're innocent. You yourself relinquished, gave up your independence. You surrendered your independence. And you can regain it. No one's taken it from you. You've just given it up. You can take it back. And the only way to do that is to bring it back home. We'll talk about some examples. And I want all of you to be able to bring it back home. Think it through. When we go over various examples, bring it back home. This is all I'm asking you to do today. Just bring it back home. Because when you bring it back home, now you can start finding an eternal solution. Every other solution is very temporary. If you try to fix the world around you, all solutions are temporary. You will forever have to keep implementing those solutions. Forever. Let's take a really simple example. 27. This one's on 26. I have asked our monks not to set the air conditioners on two different temperatures because it's pointless. One heats the room up, the other cools the room down. Right? So let's use that as an example. I want them to set them on the same temperature. I don't care what the temperature is. I'm not talking about whether it's too hot or too cold. But the fact that they're set on two different temperatures is meaningless. The aircon is not running at optimal performance because one's heating the room up and the other's cooling the room down. What's the point? It's pointless to do that. You got to set it at the same temperature. It doesn't matter what the temperature is, but you got to set it at the same temperature. But no, see, that's what I want. So it makes sense to me. Therefore, when I speak to people, when I speak to the people who arrange this room, I say, please make sure you set them to the same temperature. This is what I want them to do. I can't remember how many times I have said this. And yet today, they're set on two different temperatures. That's good. Perhaps they said it that way so that we can come up with an example. We need to learn to bring it back home. There's a problem, right? This is a problem. We need to learn to bring the problem back home. Right now the problem's out there. I asked you to do this because I want you to do this. I want you to set these air cons at the same temperature. I want you to do this. The problem's not back home yet. The problem's out there. So now I need to find solutions. If the problem's out there, I need to go speak to people to find solutions. I have to continue to talk to them. And it's non-stop. This is why I said, this is probably the 10th time I have mentioned this. And yet today, I find these two air cons on two different temperatures. I don't expect that there ever will be a day when I don't have to say it. So it will probably be fixed for next week. Oh, there's no sermon next week, by the way. But the week after, and maybe the week after, and maybe the week after. But a month's time from now, I will bet my top dollar these air cons will be on two different temperatures. Why is that? That's the way it is. Because I haven't brought the problem back home. I want someone else to do what I want. I want someone else to change. In other words, what I'm saying is, I don't like what you're doing, you change. So you haven't brought the problem back home. To bring the problem back home, is to understand that the problem was never out there. Now, this is only an example, of course, right? Even an arahant would point it out, by the way, simply because it's not efficient to have the air cons on two different temperatures. It's meaningless. So therefore, even an arahant would point it out. But this is just an example we're using here. So to drive the point home, what I need to learn to do then is to be able to accept that it's perfect the way it is. To do that, I need to be able to bring the problem home. I want them to be at the same temperature. This is the cause of my suffering. This is the cause of my suffering. So if I were to go on protest with a placard, what would I have written on it? I want the air cons on the same temperature. So in fact, if I were to see, let's imagine these monks, they don't listen to anything I say. So I have to take a letter of complaint to Guru Hamdru. I say, Guru Hamdru, see, these monks, I told you don't ordain these, right? And they don't listen to me. And so I say, I want them to set the room temperature. I want them to set the two air cons on the same temperature, but they never do it. This is my complaint letter. If I were to take this to Guru Hamdru, what's he going to say? He's going to say, oh, well done, Namadasana Hamdru. You have identified the problem. Now go work on it. Go fix it. Why? That's what my problem is on the letter. He's going to say, see, you've identified the problem. Well done, my boy. Now go work on it. Go work on it. He's not going to ask Dasahamdru to come and have a word with him. He's just going to say, no, you've identified the problem, now work on it. You want the two air cons to be on the same temperature. That is your problem. This is what bringing it home is all about. See, if I observe what is happening out there and I fail to bring the problem home, now my conception is that the problem's out there. So there are people out there who don't do what I want them to do. Do you think I will ever be at peace? How could I be? Because guess what? Next week I'm going to come in through this door and the first thing I'm going to have to do is what? Look up. And the following week, the same thing. And the following, the same thing. Because to get someone to do something I want them to do is an abhisankara. In other words, change the world to your liking. Not rid yourself of liking, but change the world to your liking. That is what abhisankara is, in really simple terms. Changing the world to your liking. The things that you do, the things that you say, and the thoughts that you have to change the world to your liking. This is what abhisankara is. Sabba sankaresu attiyati harayati jigucchati, the Buddha teaches us. Attiyati. This is like throwing the dog a bone. A bone which has no meat on it, no meat around it. And every bite this dog takes, the bone's going to start cracking and it's going to start pricking holes in this animal's mouth. It's going to start hurting the animal. And it's going to start bleeding. And then whenever it savors the taste, it's going to be the taste of its own blood. So with every chew it makes, it's hurting itself. See, I can never be at peace if I want the outside world to change to my liking, instead of working on myself by bringing the problem home. And let's see if you can bring the problem home. You come home after work and it's a Tuesday, so every other day you have an arrangement at home. You have an arrangement at home whereby every other day you do the dishes, and alternating days your husband or your wife does the dishes. So you come home on a Tuesday. Tuesday is husband's day, not my day. Tuesday is husband's day. You come home and you find the dishes have not been done. What's the immediate and natural reaction? Anger. Annoyance. See, the moment you see that thing, you see what's going on there, the initial knee-jerk reaction to that is anger. It's almost automatic. It's almost automatic. It just comes so naturally. Anger comes so naturally. Annoyance and